Speaking of wine, a lot of people are intimidated by wine, even if they do enjoy drinking. But New York Times chief wine critic Eric Asimov says they should not be afraid. He's written a new book called How to Love Wine, and Bill Plante gamely volunteered to study along with him.
Yes.
Eric Asimov knows a thing or two about wine, but he believes everyone can fall in love with wine if they can just stop worrying about it.
The problem that I encounter so often with people, and I talk to people about wine all the time, and they're afraid of it. And this is nothing new. We all have that feeling of intimidation by a wine list, having to make a choice, having a certain amount of performance anxiety.
And that may keep you from enjoying wine with food and friends, but, says Asimov, it shouldn't.
It's like opera, for example. I mean, not everybody knows a lot about opera, but who feels guilty about it? So why should people feel so bad if they don't know so much about wine?
So you're walking into a store and you're confronted with all of these bottles.
Right.
And maybe you don't know what you want. What's your best approach?
Absolute number one best approach, talk to a merchant. I think that people who love wine get a tremendous kick out of being able to turn other people on to something they love.
And he says, don't be afraid to try something different. Be adventurous.
This is a everyday, glug-worthy wine with a screw cap.
Your other option is to read about wine. There's certainly no shortage of books promising to teach you everything. But Asimov says that's not the whole answer.
It's like trying to learn about golf by watching a videotape or something. It's not going to work. You've got to put in time and practice and effort, like learning a musical instrument or a sport. But
the practice is easier than learning a musical instrument.
It's certainly more pleasurable.
But what about taking the advice of the pros, the people who write tasting notes and give wines numerical scores? Asimov says those aren't really much help.
Apricot and fig compote and melted road tar, and I mean, you get crazy with these things, but it's really silly, and that doesn't help us understand wine to break it down to aroma and flavor.
I think it tastes like asparagus.
At the Pata Negra wine bar, Scott Kasha couldn't agree more.
That's like the quintessential wine thing, it has hints of chocolate. Well, I like chocolate, but it also has hints of dirt. I mean, who wants to drink chocolate and dirt?
The more you taste, the more you get to appreciate it.
And Fernando Romero talked about the anxiety that goes with having to select wine from a list when he's out with clients.
And I don't want to participate in that. I just really like to sit back and enjoy a good glass of wine with some friends, which is what I think is most important.
Wines from the Southwest.
Asimov says you can spend your whole life learning about grapes, vineyards, and vintages, but in the end, really, it all comes down to just the sheer pleasure of it.
One of the things I think our country does is convey the idea that in order to enjoy wine, you have to know everything about it first. No, you want to love wine, want to embrace it. It's that emotional connection that I think really helps get the pleasure out of wine.
And everyone can drink to that. For CBS This Morning, Bill Plante in New York.
When Bill Plante talks about politics, he knows what he's talking about. When he talks about wine, he knows what he's talking about.